Welcome back to the Jeffrey Daugherty Show, Christian Whistleblower NCK YouTube channel. And today I've got something for you that I think is going to be exciting. I think you're going to enjoy it. And it really is something very interesting. And it's something for some reason we don't hear a whole lot about. I don't really understand why, but it is the close encounters of the Nuremburg and close encounters of the Basel kind. And I want to take you back in history to the 16th century and take a look at what really is a stunning UFO experience in Nuremberg, Germany, and Basel, Switzerland. Now, a lot of us haven't heard about this, and it seems crazy to me because we hear so much, about the place out in Nevada, Area 51, Roswell, and all that stuff. But we don't hear much about this big, huge event, which definitely was a very profound and a very exciting, if you will, UFO event. Nice to see you, Chris. And I'm going to try to keep a little bit of an eye on the chat room, but it's going to be difficult because we're going through some stuff here today. So let me go ahead and just start telling you the story of what happened with the Nuremberg situation. And of course, Nuremberg is over in Germany. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, and let's get an idea of what actually happened. So in 1561, now that sounds like it's a long time ago, forever ago, and it is quite a while ago, but keep in mind that the King James Version came out in 1611. So you're only about 50 years before the King James Version. And there was a celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. And it is not in any doubt that it actually happened, but it was a celestial phenomena. And celestial phenomena, by according to Wikipedia, is astronomical phenomenon that involves celestial bodies. And they say it's usually phases of the moon, sun, lunar eclipses, transits, occultations, oppositions, conjunctions, meteor showers. And that's, of course, what you'd expect, unbiased scientific minds to talk about. But also includes many times UFO, or unidentified flying object. And we have to remember the strict definition of UFO is unidentified flying object. So you can have a UFO without it being alien. All it has to be is some type of an object that is unidentified, right? So we just want to make sure that we get our facts straight and we get our definition straight, because UFO doesn't necessarily mean aliens. But however, this one seems to me to be very much along that line. Now, if we look at this picture, and this is, I'll get into this, but this was a, nobody had a cell phone in 1561. Nobody had an iPhone. Nobody was able to take film of it. But this is a drawing that was done based on the descriptions of people and eyewitnesses that said this is what happened. And the official story of it is, as you take a better look at it, the official story of this is that it was a sundog. And let me show you what a sundog looks like. This is a sundog. And basically what happens is the sun comes up and you've got twin reflections that are in a 22-degree halo. And for some reason, this happens at times. It's called a sundog. And that's what they're saying that this Nuremberg event was just a sundog. However, as I look at it, and as I learn how to use Wikipedia, it is, I just don't know. I don't see a sundog here. But let's get into it deeper and see what's going on. So the phenomenon in Nuremberg has been interpreted by modern UFO enthusiasts as an aerial battle, likely of extraterrestrial origin. Of course, it's 1561. There couldn't have been much extra or terrestrial aerial battles going on. So they think that, most people dismiss it as skeptics. But here's what happened. Around dawn, April 14th, which is a 5, which is interesting, residents of Nuremburg, which is a German city, and I lived in Germany for 3 years, and the Germans typically aren't really given to sensationalism. So what they described was an aerial battle, followed by the appearance of a large black triangular object. Remember the Phoenix lights? And then a large crash outside the city. So was this battle enjoined and some of the craft were damaged and they crashed? According to witnesses, there were hundreds of spheres, cylinders, and other odd-shaped objects that moved erratically. And I mean, this comes from UFOs and Aliens. This comes from Mammoth Encyclopedia of Extraterrestrial Encounters, Wonders in the Sky, Missing Pieces of Heaven and Earth essays presented at the first Sitchin Studies Day. So, ouch. That hurt. I just cracked myself. But anyway, there was talks of hundreds of spheres. We're not just talking about 1 or 2 UFOs. We're talking about hundreds of spheres. And of course, he didn't draw hundreds, but there's a bunch of stuff in the sky. So did these people just imagine, and could a sundog explain all of these things? Yeah, that doesn't really wash for me too well. So a broadsheet news article was printed later that month. That's what I'm talking about here, is the broadsheet news article describing the event. It was illustrated with a woodcut engraving by Hans Glasser, and the document is archived in the prints and drawings collection at the Zentralbibliothek Zurich in Zurich, Switzerland. It's the central library. The broadsheet describes objects of various shapes, including crosses, globes, crescents, a black spear, and tubular objects from which several smaller round objects emerged and departed the sky at dawn. This according to authors of The Impossible, The Paranormal, and the Sacred. So, I mean, you had a paranormal extravaganza going on. It wasn't just one UFO. It wasn't just 2 UFOs. It was a bunch of damn UFOs. Let me take a look through the chat room here. Good morning, everybody. Glad you like the topic. You should do live show on if spirits and aliens are demons. That I can certainly do that. I agree with you, Super Niz. That's not a sundog. Nicholas Tracy, that's incredibly loaded and finely lined question. Anyway, I guess we could do it here if they're aliens or demons. Solid black triangle over Pismo Beach. Yes, black triangles are fairly replete throughout UFO ideas. We're talking about archons. We're talking about UFOs. Stupid UFO comes to my place. Yep, Double X is ready. He's locked and loaded. So this was some extraordinary type of stuff. This wasn't just your normal benign UFO type of a situation. This was big time stuff, hundreds of them. And let's get back and talk about the description. I'm going to read you the actual description from the 1561. From this right here, I'm going to read you this part from the original German. Of course, there was a day I could have, but I could probably still do it, but I don't know if I could get through it really that well. So let's look at this. In the morning of April 14th at daybreak, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun, and this was seen in Nuremberg, in the city, before the gates, and in the country. So it was a fairly widespread local phenomenon by many men and women. It wasn't just 1 or 2 old drunk Germans, stumbling home from the gas house. It was many men and women. At first, there appeared in the middle of the sun. And I mean, the sun must have come up really early that day. But at any rate, at first there appeared in the middle of the sun, perhaps it was the moon, 2 blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. So let's take a look at this. There appeared 2 blood-red semicircular arcs on the sun. Now, this could be where they're getting the sundog stuff, but I mean, this guy is showing them horizontal. Sundogs are always vertical, and they're along a 22-degree arc. This is certainly not a 22 degree arc. So it seems like it's really reaching to me to say that that would be a sundog. Doesn't look like a sundog, doesn't act like a sundog, doesn't talk like a sundog. I don't think it's a sundog. So at any rate, there appeared two blood red semicircles, and in the sun, above and below on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partly dull black ferrous color, like iron, like rusted iron. So where's he at there on the dark ball? I guess kind of like these here are the dark balls. All right. So above the sun, ferrous color, there stood on both sides as a torus about the sun, blood red ones, and other balls in large number, about 3 and 4 in a square, also some alone. In between these globes, there were a few visible blood red crosses, between which were blood red strips becoming thicker to the rear and in the front malleable like rods of reed grass, which are intermingled among them two big rods, one on the right, one on the left. With the small and big rods, there were 3, also 4 or more globes. So you can see what he's talking about. You know, here's the rods, and then these 4 at a time ships, and then you've got the balls, and it almost sounds like these things are coming out of the rods, and then these things even further subdivide into the balls. So it almost sounds like you've got, for lack of a better term, mothership type things that have these things, kind of like Foo Fighters, detach, and then from these things detach other balls. And then you've got, probably what appears to me to be like fire trails, or, from these things locomoting around because they get thinner at the top and then they're, jagged on the end. So that, to me, I could see that very much being a whoosh, this thing's flying by and this thing's flying by, and, that's what it looks like to me. And I'll get back to the chat room in just a minute. You can tell me what it looks like to you. So then they all started to fight among themselves, so that the globes which were first in the sun flew out to the one standing on both sides, and therefore the globes standing outside the sun and the large and small rods flew into the sun. So basically what you have is a battle between these rod ships. How interesting is that? And they're fighting each other. They're shooting at each other. I mean, it really is a aerial sky battle. Sundog my butt. And when the conflict was most intense, they became fatigued to such an extent, as said above, that they fell from the sun down upon the earth as if they all burned. And then they wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. So obviously some of them were shot down. And then after this, there was something like a black spear, very long and thick-sided, the shaft pointing to the east, and the point pointed west. So here's your black spear. Here's the east. Here's the west, right? So I guess that's the north and that's the south. So here's this thing, this black spear that appeared after all of this. And then here's some of those things, those craft burning. And look, people are checking them out, and they crash and they're burning. So obviously these things were shot down in an aerial battle, and they crash out here in the countryside, and people are out here checking them out. And then they notice this big black spear, which for obvious reasons, it wasn't that hard to notice. And then the big black spear, whatever such signs mean, God alone knows. Although we have seen shortly one after another many kinds of signs in the heavens, which were sent to us by God, yada, yada, yada. We speak them with ridicule and discard them on the wind, that God may send us frightening punishment on account of our ungratefulness. So they went, very much into what you would expect, middle-aged religious people to do. Say, oh man, we saw this. Obviously God is mad at us. So let's go ahead and blame ourselves because obviously it's something that God was doing to us. So Very interesting and very, very detailed, very, very dramatic. Very dramatic. So let's see what we got in the chat room here. And I can't possibly keep up with all of this. Four and 5 a.m. Angel Wars for 1 hour. That's interesting. Has anybody else seen the old painting in the foreground? There's a couple in the background. Yeah, a lot of the old paintings do have two things that, you know, look like spaceships, but a lot of times they're I mean, it says they're the sun and the moon, so a lot of times they are just depicting the sun and the moon in a weird random way, but you know, I'm not saying that's the way it is all the time. There's some relatively recent science that points that the sun may actually be an event horizon. That's interesting. The cigar-shaped ships are the reptilians. Huh. I don't think I've heard that before. And do all reptilians smoke cigars? That's what I'm wondering. And rat bastard, rods and balls, Elohim, Anunnaki against the reptilians. Now that's an interesting thought. The reptilians against the Anunnaki. Wonder what the big black thing is. My speculations, Clue Cracker, would be that the black thing might have been the thing that was off in the distance shooting all the balls down. And once he shot them all down, he came to do a recon to look and make sure that he got them taken care of. Just a thought that come to my mind. Yeah, the mothership, or the, you know, the Star Cruiser, or the, you know, what were those big things in Star Wars? I'm not a Star Wars guy, but those big ships that kind of looked like that. You know, they would shoot stuff. But anyway, very, very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. Even if there is a real UFO, why do they have to conceal themselves? I have no respect for anything that has to conceal themselves. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Modern interpretations, I don't know if we really want to go after go through these, because a lot of people say, you know, they're just a bunch of dummies and blah, blah, blah. But this wasn't the only one. There was also one that, here it is. There was also one over Basel, Switzerland. And if you look at it, it looks strikingly similar to the one that was talked about over Nuremberg, right? Same kind of balls, same kind of, you know, things affecting around the sun. And the sun's probably just really a backdrop or a backlight to all of this. But what happened in Basel, and this was in 1566, so about 5 years after the Nuremberg, and I've been to Basel, Switzerland. So about 5 years later, there's one that happened in 1566, and then there's a pamphlet that describes unusual sunrises and sunsets. So now we're back to the sundog interesting thing. And then there's people that talk about other miracles and things in the sky. So let's look at the phenomenon here in 1566. Against the sunrise and sunset, we saw strange shapes in the sky above Basel. I mean, it's backlighting it perfectly. So again, that does not look like a sundog to me. I mean, what is all this? It's definitely something more profound than just a sundog. First, the sun lost its radiance and luster, seemed to weep tears of blood. There's the blood again. It was seen by all of the people. He lit the house, streets, and suns of everything was blood red and fiery. Okay, now this one doesn't talk so much. The description doesn't really give reference to these orbs. So maybe this one was more of a sundog or a strictly celestial phenomenon, because it doesn't really talk too much about the actual, you know, sighting of things like the Nuremberg sighting does. So very interesting anyway, that we have these descriptions of very big events. And to me, this is much more profound and much more detailed than anything they ever brought to us from Roswell, or even over there in Rendlesham Forest in England. So I don't know why we don't hear more about this, but it's very, very interesting to me. Very, very It's just profound to me. I think that it really seems to be it really, and I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing and I wasn't sharing, but there wasn't any. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't sharing that. Let me share that with you. Still trying to learn how to do this stuff. I'll show you the Basel ones. And here's the Basel picture. It looks kind of like, the picture looks kind of like what they were talking about in Nuremberg, except the description of it has nothing to do with it. It just talks about the sun being different looking and so on or so forth. So, oh, here we go. I didn't read the whole thing. How about that? At the dawn of August 7th, which again corresponds with when it took place in Nuremberg, we saw large black spheres coming and going with great speed and precipitation before the sun, and chattered as if they led a fight. Many of them were fiery red, soon succumbed and extinguished. Again, more of them falling to the earth. So people say, oh, that's just a meteor shower. Well, the Basel one sounds like it could just be a meteor shower. But the one 5 years before that in Nuremberg, unless and until meteors start fighting with each other, and unless and until motherships start coming around to check on meteor showers, I think we can say that it's really something of a different sort. So very, very interesting. The Nuremberg and the Basel encounter. Very, very interesting stuff. Let me take a look here through the chat room again. I feel like Satan's greatest trick was for us to lead the human race to believe that there's no such thing as the devil or Jesus or God. Well, sorry, Nick, I don't agree with you, but I do appreciate you being here, and I certainly welcome you to share your opinion, and that's no problem at all. I think there is such a thing as the devil, Jesus, or God, and the one that we all kind of worship, they're all the same dude. But anyway, I do have a large monitor, Chris. But the Lord hiding his name and his face covered with blood from all he slaughtered. Somebody's been watching some good YouTube videos. That's exactly right. When the Lord comes back in his purported second coming, he's hiding his own name and he's covered with blood. And the Greek says blood that has splattered from arteries. So it's interesting. Let's see. Aliens are a confirmation of God and infinite creation. Okay. I'm convinced the biggest trick is to make us apathetic and inhuman towards each other. I could certainly agree with that. If aliens are, whoops, where'd that go? If aliens are a creation of God, then they would definitely be demons because demons are a creation of God also. Oh, that's for another show. Vimanas, yep, very much like Vimanas. Absolutely. The sun had a face in this era of art, which is interesting. Yep. I caught some of this on vacation. Oh, good for you, Irma. I'm glad you got a vacation. There's a cult out there that would say, this is the one trying to rescue us. Yes, there is, Lynn, and you got to be careful of that cult for sure. Hey, Sherry, how are you? I love German culture, studied it in school. It is fascinating. The Stardust Ranch, I've not heard of, Stacy. And the SETI Ranch, also in Washington State. And I don't know how long we've been on here, but I'll bring you one more thing as well. Just to you know what, I was going to bring it out of my book, but let's just talk about it. Let's go to it. I want to just show you this real quickly. Just since we're on the subject of UFOs and ETs and phenomenon, it's my opinion that alien agenda in the New Testament is in close alignment with the monumental happenings in the life of Jesus, and that an ET agenda has linked itself to Jesus. And when you think about it, the birth of Jesus is only mentioned in 2 of the Gospels. Only 0.666% of the entire New Testament's 8,000 verses are dedicated to the birth of Jesus. But when Mary, I'm just going to read this to you. You know what it says in the original, in the King James Version. Let me read to you what it says when Mary was told by the angel she was going to have a baby, what it says in the original Greek. Mary discovered that she was holding in her womb something from the Lord. She discovered that she was holding in her womb something from the Lord. Baby, infant, child, those words are not used there. And then, the other, I didn't go back far enough, but also well, I don't know if it's here. You just have to, I wrote the book. I'll tell you it was there. That when the Greek says that the Lord would paralyze Mary, take control of her body, and deposit something in her womb from the Lord. Again, didn't say one thing about baby, infants, or children, just something in her womb. And Mary did discover, after being paralyzed, after being impregnated with something from the Lord, which sounds exactly like a UFO alien type of a impregnation, medical event, paralyzing her, inseminating her, and then she's holding something from the Lord, not a baby, not an infant, not a child. And then here it is right here. Your womb will be taken hold of or seized. And you will be overtaken as in an attack. The power, might, and strength of the Lord will overtake you. After this, you'll discover you're holding in the womb something from the presence of the Lord. This written by a doctor, namely Luke. Wow. Tell me about that. Does that not sound like some UFO, ET, alien imagery? And it's called a thing of supernatural origin, not a baby or anything else like that. And then when we actually go to the Bethlehem event, the shepherds are out in the fields, and a messenger of the Lord appears as in an attack, with blinding brightness shining all around them. A being from the sky suddenly and out of nowhere appears as in an attack, with blinding brightness, encasing them in blinding columns of light. Does that not sound like a UFO, ET, alien encounter? And of course, they were sore afraid. And while we're here, let's just go and talk about the crucifixion. It was, darkness did not fall. A shadow was cast. Something cast a shadow that fell over the region of Jerusalem. This is from Final Message of the Last Apostle. The shadow cast for about 3 hours, according to the original Greek New Testament. And then when the thing started to leave, Jesus, supposedly on the cross, looks up and says, "Why are you abandoning me and leaving me here?" Something caused a shadow, and when it left, Jesus cries out, "Why are you leaving me behind?" And when it leaves, the exhaust of it, or the temporal disturbance of it, causes an earthquake, which tears the temple veil and causes earthquakes that cause gravestones to roll away. And just to complete the circle, at the resurrection purported of Jesus, a great shaking seismic activity, because the messenger of the Lord was descending or coming down from the heavens, and as it drew near, the shaking caused the stone to roll away. It looked like it was shining and lightning. So you have not only in Nuremburg, but in the New Testament, surrounding the events of the life of Jesus. And then we talk about the second coming and the Lord hiding his name, coming back in what the New Testament describes as a spaceship. And you've got some really interesting stuff. And let's see how many of the chat room that I have completely blown out. But we'll go ahead and just take a look, and we'll finish this up. All right. Interesting stuff. Greetings from Costa Rica. Thank you, Mauricio. This is spooky. I agree with you. Deutsch Bier ist sehr gut, Jung. Well, I wish. What the hell was that? No doubt. How do you say yum in German? You really don't. You just say yum. You just say bango. Gnostics have an entire dissertation on the archons. Spaceship, laugh out loud. Earth is flat for sure. Oh boy, here we go. I don't mind people that believe in flat Earth. I'm not there, but as long as you're courteous and don't just randomly blurt out flat Earth. Yeah, aliens do seem to love the teenage girls, don't they? That's very interesting because Mary might have been teenage. She might have been 10, 11, 12. So there you go. And I don't agree with you there, Dr. Illusion, but I see where you're coming from. Okay, spaceship, most aliens love them. Where's my damn ship? Exactly. How about that? So there you go. Interesting stuff about UFOs from the New Testament and from the ancient stories, not ancient, but 16th century stories of Nuremburg and Basel shortly before, 50 years before the presentation of the King James Bible to planet Earth. How about that? Interesting stuff, stuff that makes us go, because I mean, this was back before Coast to Coast, before Ancient Aliens, and yet people were still seeing this stuff in the sky. So I think we probably are past the place where we can say there's no such thing as UFOs, and we have to come to a place where we say, what are UFOs and what are our dealings with them? That's just my opinion, but who am I? I'm just your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. Nice to have you here with us. This is our attempt to unwind your mind, help you unwind your mind, help you unindoctrinate yourself, help you learn how to guide your own spirit, be your own guru, and master your own ascension. And most importantly, learn how to be excellent to yourself, love yourself, so you can love your neighbor, so we can all be excellent to each other. And that's when things really start working. I'll be back later with some more great information. You can contact me through the information in the box below. And until next time, Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, we will see you then.